So I thought long and hard about what to call this video, and I think that this title is perfect. I don't think it's baity at all. You let me know. Hello YouTubers, this is noobifier. As a fan and follower of the continuing drama, which is the pre-alpha development of Star Citizen, I do like to play other games. I know that there are some purists out there who only play Star Citizen. That's fine for you, but that's not me. I find it great to take a break and dump into another title because there are too many people making too many other great games for me just to focus on one incomplete title. I do like sim and shooters, but I do like me a good first-person RPG like Fallout, Cyberpunk, or Borderlands. The gameplay may be fun, but what really gets me invested is those world-building, lore, character, and story. I backed Star Citizen for the PU, and yes, of course I'm going to play Squadron 42 whenever it releases. On today's topic, is Chris worried about Starfield? We should compare CIG against a more conventional game studio. By doing so, we will come to the conclusion that they are not the same, that they do not operate the same, and they do not have the same requirements. So we'll say that Bethesda Studio and CIG began working on their games at the same time. We will say that both companies estimated that it would take $300 million and 10 years to make the game. That $300 million may not happen all at once because of staffing and offices, but that will come from somewhere. Bethesda either allocates its own money to the project, or they take out a loan, or they get backing from another corporate entity. The pressure is on from day one to deliver, not only to the fans, but the ticking clock that is money. The investment and promises have legal contracts, and missing these, regardless of the reason, will have a cost. CIG's crowdfunding model means that they do not have to invest their own money, they do not need to take out a loan, and they're under no pressure from any other corporate entity, except for that South African dude. Due to the transparency, there's perhaps more pressure to deliver from the fans, but there's no ticking clock from money, just a ticking clock from any deadlines that were promised. CIG really has no personal investment because of the funding model, and they're not legally liable for missing deadlines, even if doing so will result in a wave of frustration and drama. And we've seen no matter what happens, the funding keeps going up. So to answer the question, is Chris worried about Starfield from a corporate perspective? No, I don't think so. Starfield might actually create more love for space sim RPG in general, and basically that would be buttering up gamers and making them more interested in trying Squadron when it releases. Squadron is still a blip on the radar compared to a AAA game made from a AAA company. I'm not saying that there are not millions of people watching and waiting, but I will make my point this way. The most viewed video on the subject of Star Citizen is the Imagine trailer, which is a fan-made Star Citizen-inspired video. It was published on the 19th of December 2014 and in total has 2.3 million views. For comparison, the Starfield original trailer from 2 years ago has over 17 million views, the one from last year has over 5 million views, and the one from 10 days ago has 2.5 million views. Bethesda needs a clean launch, and they need to hit their release date or it hurts their company. CIG also needs a clean launch, but they actually don't need to hit any release date because aside from the work and time invested by its staff and perhaps the one or two people who bought a stake into the game, they won't be hurt. This funding model removes the ticking clock, and the past deadlines backfired badly, so it makes sense that they don't and shouldn't release any more deadlines. There's no reason to. People are still paying. Single-player games come and go regardless of how good they launch and regardless of how big they are. Off the top of your head, you can go down a list of games that came out in the last 5 years. You've watched all of the big streamers hype, play through, and then they die off. The hype is sustained longer for other game types which can generate a larger fan base, but the reality is you can watch Captain Richard or TV Liquid play through any game, but you wouldn't tune in if they only played Borderlands 2 or if they only played Diablo or the Old Republic. The same will happen with Squadron 42. 1 or 2 playthroughs at maximum, or perhaps every other Friday, you'll have a stream devoted just to Squadron 42. Repetition will eventually take over as people have seen it over and over or have played it over and over themselves. It'll release and it'll disappear with a huge bubble, which is fantastic awareness and would be a gigantic chunk of vindication for this project. There will always be those haters who call it a scam, but if Squadron 42 launches clean and delivers what was promised, you could easily always counter by just saying, yeah, it was late, but it wasn't and isn't a scam. I have some interesting things for you to consider. The more time we spend perfecting the game, the better, and that's obvious. But what if the motivation isn't to finish the game fast, but to pause at the correct time? Releasing Squadron and Starfield at the same time is dumb. CIG might actually be aware that no matter how good Squadron is, Starfield still has a larger following. It's too late to launch it before, but I actually think that Chris has been moving the release date waiting for something else. It's a bit of a joke at this point how every single free fly coincides with a horrible time to play Star Citizen PU. Many will say that the low performance is due to the free fly, but I can also see this as the desire to wow and impress with new features. New features at the release of a new patch in CIG's desire to hype things is for them to show what's been done, and that is exactly the right time for a free fly, in their minds. Now we should escalate this 10 magnitudes and evaluate what would happen when Squadron releases. People's minds are blown by the story, game, and cinematics. Millions of people see and play, and then when all of that is done, they'll go play the PU. So let's say we have invisible enemy clipping through the floor, an MMO that has a player cap of 100, NPCs that T-pose on tables, missions that cannot be completed because they're broken, 150 non-flyable ships, and 1 out of 100 planned star systems released. So Chris will see Squadron not only as a game, but a massive advertising campaign for the PU. Squadron will sell. CIG will make a ton of money, and that'll be great for the company because unlike Starfield, all of this money is pure profit. Because CIG didn't need to front their own capital, they didn't need to take out a loan, and they really have nobody to pay except for that one South African investor that we heard about 5 years ago. If you think CIG has missed deadlines due to mismanagement, I would say no, that's not possible. And I believe after thinking about all of this and how it would unfold, it now makes perfect sense. Chris is not worried about Starfield, but eventually Squadron 42 will seem more like a last gen instead of a next gen game. It has to come out soon, but despite everyone thinking Squadron is holding back the PU, it's actually the other way around. The PU needs to be better, more polished, more fleshed out, with pyro, functional meshed servers, persistence, missions, medical, law, bounty, and systems to explore. These all need to be ready for the millions of new players. If you thought the little uptick during a free fly was funny, wait and see the joke when the servers get blasted with a tsunami of interest. I should end there, but I want to talk about transparency, missing deadlines, and the release schedule. Answer the Call was 2016, and that was already 2 years later than the original proposed release date. We all know that scope and scale grew, and this accounts for the missed deadlines, and this is why the funding continues to grow with no known plan aside from the Gantt chart and the bi-weekly updates from Jake. We know Chris loves a good show, but I also know that the last thing CIG needs to do right now is to hype a deadline and then miss it again. So I ask you a question, and this is where you can get involved. Let's say at CitizenCon, Chris announces that Squadron will release on whatever day. That could be Christmas, in the spring, next summer, whenever, and it doesn't actually matter. The media might go crazy and run a story. The media will also focus on the negatives with questions like, can Chris finally deliver? Will it miss another deadline? Positives and negatives both hype. And then CIG would pay money to run commercials, and they make the game available again in the store perhaps for $80. The release comes and goes. As planned, it's a perfect launch, and here's another way of doing that. Let's skip the announcement. Let's have no dates, no announcement, nothing. You log in one day and the launcher is there after it's patched itself. There's a new tab that says Install Squadron 42. Again, no info up until this point. Let's say this happens to Captain Richard. They tweet about it, they install it live, and people rush to their systems to play and experience Squadron 42 for themselves. The media runs the story, and the buzz is even larger than if the date was announced. We don't have any negative stories because there it is, it's launched. New citizens arrive to play based on the hype, and yeah, I think this would be how I would like to have Squadron 42 launch. No announcement, it just shows up. So now it's up to you. You have a very big job. Comment in the comments with your comments about the following. 1. Do you think that Starfield has Chris worried? 2. Do you think that CIG is planning to announce the release of Squadron at CitizenCon this year? And 3. How do you feel about my proposal of a stealth launch for Squadron? Remember that all of the scenarios that I propose are under the assumption that there will be a clean launch, and after 10 years, let's assume that that's going to happen. All of the profit, prosperity, and vindication relies on that clean launch and a stable PU to capitalize on that momentum. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. The video only makes sense when more people watch it, so I would ask if you found it interesting, please share and discuss wherever that makes sense. Starfield is looking pretty sick, and my hope is that Squadron will be worth the wait. Fly safe, and I'll see you in the verse.